You are listening to HOA Karma Files. She tried to find me for a guest pass. I work as a safety compliance officer. I write incident reports for a living. I document timelines. I cross-reference timestamps. I know what evidence holds up and what collapses under scrutiny. So when the HOA president at Hillcrest Estates Association in Arlington, Texas, decided to turn my guest parking into a towing war, she picked the wrong guy to gaslight. "Do not point at me like that," I said. Karen was already mid-yell, arm extended, finger jabbing the air between us like she was conducting an orchestra of petty tyranny. She had a handheld plate scanner in her other hand, thrusting it inches from my guest's rear plate, screen turned away so I could not see what she was scanning. Her voice cut through the parking lot. "Visitor parking has a 2-hour limit and I am timing you like a sport," she snapped. "Your guest has been here for 11 minutes, and I am logging every single second." I glanced at my friend's sedan. He had pulled into an unmarked spot near the mailboxes to drop off a document I needed notarized. No signs, no painted curbs, no fire lane markings, just asphalt and a row of parked cars that looked identical to his. "There is no 2-hour limit here," I said. "This is not visitor parking. There are no signs." She smiled. The kind of smile that makes you check your tires for slashes later. "I am the reason this neighborhood stays civilized," she said. "And I do not need a sign to enforce common sense. This is a fire lane." It was not a fire lane. There was no curb paint, no striping, no posted signage. But Karen did not care. She turned and walked toward the management office, scanner still in hand, and I heard her talking into her phone. "Yes, I need a tow truck at Hillcrest Estates, visitor lot near the mailboxes. Unauthorized vehicle blocking emergency access. Tow on-site authorization under HOA enforcement contract." I had 10 minutes before the notary appointment. Missing it would delay my sworn statements for weeks. I needed those statements to close a vendor audit at work, and my license depended on staying current with compliance deadlines. The stakes were not abstract. If this HOA harassment spiraled into legal trouble or missed deadlines, my career took the hit. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Karen turned back, saw the camera, and her face went nuclear. "You are not allowed to record me," she said. "Public space," I said. "And you just called a tow truck on a guest who is parked legally in an unmarked spot. I am documenting everything." She stepped closer. Her badge clip swung from her jacket collar. It had a blank face, no readable text, just a photo of her scowling at the camera like she was starring in a DMV horror film. "Your paperwork is cute," she said. "Mine has a letterhead." The tow truck rolled into the lot, amber strobe flashing. The driver stepped out, a guy in a stained vest with a clipboard, and he glanced at Karen, then at me, then at the sedan. "Where is the fire lane?" he asked. Karen pointed at the asphalt like she was casting a spell. "Right there," she said. "Emergency access. HOA Rulebook Section 12. This vehicle has been here for 13 minutes, and the owner refused to move when instructed." I stepped forward. "There is no fire lane here," I said. "No curb paint, no signage, no posted rules." She is lying. The driver looked at Karen. She pulled a folded packet from her jacket and thrust it at him. The wind caught the top page and it fluttered, but she held it down. "This is the enforcement authorization," she said. "Signed by the board president. That is me. Tow immediately, bill the vehicle owner, and if he does not pay within 72 hours, we file a lien on his property for the recovery costs." The driver looked at the curb again. He looked at the packet. He looked at me. "I need to call my supervisor," he said. Karen's face went red. "You do not need to call anyone," she said. "I am the authority here. I am the reason this neighborhood stays civilized. You tow that car right now, or I will have your company removed from our vendor contract." The driver walked back to his truck and pulled out his phone. Karen turned to me, voice low and sharp. "You think this is over? This is just the start. I run a compliance hotline for this HOA, and every call goes through me. Every complaint, every violation, every fine. I write the notices, I schedule the hearings, and I decide who gets enforcement action. And you just made my list. The driver came back. My boss says if there is no visible fire lane marking and no posted signage, we cannot tow without a police sign-off, he said. HOA authorization is not enough for a fire lane claim. You need to call the city. Karen's jaw tightened. She stared at the driver, then at me, then back at the driver. Fine, she said. I will call the city. But this vehicle stays here until they arrive. And if the owner moves it before enforcement arrives, I am filing a notice for obstruction and evasion. She turned and walked toward the office again, phone already at her ear. The driver shrugged at me. Good luck, man, he said. He climbed back into the truck and pulled out of the lot. Amber strobe fading down the street. I texted my friend, get out of here now. He pulled out and I walked to my apartment. My hands were shaking. Not from fear, from rage. I had just watched someone fabricate a fire lane, call a tow truck, threaten a lien, and weaponize her HOA position to intimidate a guest who was parked for less than 15 minutes in an unmarked spot. And she was not done. 2 days later, I found a notice taped to my door. Violation for hosting unauthorized guests in non-visitor parking areas. Missed hearing. $50 fine. Appeal deadline already passed. I stared at the paper. There was no hearing. I was never notified. I checked my email, my mailbox, my doorbell camera footage. Nothing. The notice claimed the hearing had been held the previous week at 10 in the morning and that I had failed to appear, so the fine was automatically upheld. I called the management company. The receptionist transferred me to the compliance department and I got voicemail. I left a message. No callback. I called again the next day. Same result. Then my doorbell camera caught something. Karen, walking up to my door at 7 in the morning, holding a stack of notices. She peeled one off, pressed it against my door, and then pulled out her phone. She took a photo of the notice on my door, then walked away. I checked the timestamp. The photo was taken 30 seconds after she placed the notice. There was no way I could have seen it, read it, or responded to it in that window. She was building a paper trail. Fake hearings, backdated notices, staged photos, all designed to create the appearance of process while ensuring I could never actually respond in time. I needed help. I reached out to another board member, a guy named Steve, who lived 2 buildings over. He was quiet, conflict-averse, and scared of Karen, but he had been on the board for 3 years and knew where the bodies were buried. We met at a coffee shop off-property. He looked over his shoulder twice before sitting down. She is doing this to everyone, he said. The compliance hotline is a sham. Every call goes to her personal cell. She decides what gets logged, what gets ignored, and what gets escalated. The rest of the board does not even see the complaints unless she wants them to. I leaned forward. Do you have proof? He hesitated. I have emails, he said. Board threads where she overruled other members and pushed through enforcement actions without a vote. But if I hand those over and she finds out, she will make my life hell. She already threatened to fine me for a bike rack I installed on my balcony. I promised Steve I would keep him out of it until the endgame, but I needed his testimony eventually. For now, I focused on what I could control. I pulled my doorbell footage, compiled the fake notice timeline, and started building a file. Then, Karen escalated. A week later, I came home to find an orange sticker on my windshield. Unauthorized vehicle. Non-compliant parking decal. Tow on site if not corrected within 24 hours. My car was parked in my assigned spot. I had a valid parking decal in the windshield. I checked the HOA rules. Decals were required to be displayed on the lower driver's side corner of the windshield, and mine was exactly there. I peeled off the sticker and knocked on the management office door. The same receptionist looked up. I need to speak to someone about this notice, I said. She glanced at the sticker. You will need to file a dispute with the compliance officer, she said. Who is the compliance officer? Patricia Cooper. Karen. I filed the dispute in writing. I included photos of my decal, my parking spot, and the relevant section of the HOA rulebook. I sent it via email with read receipt and delivery confirmation. No response. 2 days later, I got another notice. Failure to comply with decal enforcement. Second violation. Tow authorized. I called the tow company directly. A woman answered, bored voice, background noise of a truck yard. Yeah, we got an authorization from Hillcrest Estates for a silver sedan, she said. Your plate number is on the list. I asked who authorized it. She put me on hold, came back. Says here, Patricia Cooper, HOA president. Tow on site, no grace period. I asked if they verified the fire lane claim from the previous week. She did not know what I was talking about. That was a different driver, she said. But if the HOA president calls, we send a truck. That is the contract. I needed to cut the tow company out of this loop. But first, I needed leverage. I went back to Steve. He agreed to meet again, this time at a park outside the HOA boundaries. He brought a folder. These are the emails, he said. Karen pushed through a rule change last year that gave her unilateral enforcement authority. The board voted on it, but she wrote the language and scheduled the vote during a meeting most members could not attend. Only 4 people showed up, and 3 of them were her friends. I flipped through the pages. The rule change was buried in a procedural amendment. It gave the compliance officer the power to issue immediate enforcement actions without board approval, as long as the action was under $200. Tow authorizations fell under that cap. This is insane, I said. He nodded. She has been using it to harass people for 2 years. If you complain, she files a retaliation notice. If you appeal, she schedules the hearing during work hours and denies continuances. If you miss the hearing, she upholds the fine automatically. I asked if anyone had ever beaten her. One guy tried, Steve said. He hired a lawyer and fought the fine in small claims. Karen filed a counterclaim for legal costs and tied him up for 8 months. He moved out before it was resolved. I needed to force Karen into a corner where her own rules crushed her. But I could not do it alone, and I could not do it recklessly. My job depended on staying out of legal trouble, and if this fight spilled into court, my compliance license could be questioned. I needed a clean win, something that made the HOA retreat, without forcing me into a drawn-out legal battle. Then, I got the break I needed. The gate glitched. Hillcrest Estates has a main vehicle gate with a card reader and a camera. One afternoon, I swiped my resident card and the gate opened halfway, then stopped. I waited. It did not move. I reversed, swiped again. Same result. After the 3rd attempt, I pulled forward slowly and squeezed through the half-open gap. The next day, I got a notice. Unauthorized entry. Gate evasion. Trespassing on HOA property. I stared at the paper. I had not evaded anything. The gate malfunctioned, and I used the entry I paid for, but Karen had already spun it into a violation. I pulled the gate camera footage request form from the HOA website and submitted it. The rules required a response within 5 business days. 6 days later, no response. I submitted a follow-up. Another week passed. Nothing. Then my doorbell camera caught Karen again. She walked up to my building entrance at 6 in the morning, carrying a folding sign stand. She placed it at the curb in front of my assigned parking spot, adjusted it, and walked away. I checked the live feed. The sign had no readable text, but it was clearly meant to look like a no parking marker. I went outside immediately. The sign was still there. I took photos, then picked it up and carried it to the management office. The receptionist looked confused. Someone left this at my spot, I said. She shrugged. You will have to talk to the compliance officer. I am talking to you, I said. This sign is not official HOA property, and someone is using it to fabricate a violation. I want it documented that I returned it, and that I have photos of it being placed without authorization. She sighed and took the sign. I left. 3 hours later, I got a call from an unknown number. I answered. This is Patricia Cooper, HOA president at Hillcrest Estates. You removed official HOA signage from a fire lane this morning. That is destruction of property and obstruction of safety enforcement. I am filing a formal complaint with the management company and recommending immediate legal action. I did not remove anything from a fire lane, I said. I removed an unauthorized sign that was placed at my assigned parking spot, and I have doorbell footage of you placing it there this morning. Silence. Then, she hung up. I saved the call log, I uploaded the doorbell footage to a cloud backup, and I started drafting a demand letter. But Karen was not done escalating. 2 days later, I came home to find my car booted, a yellow wheel clamp locked onto the driver's side front tire, a notice zip-tied to the door handle, non-compliant vehicle, unpaid fines, immobilization authorized under HOA enforcement contract. I called the tow company again. Same woman, same bored voice. Yeah, we got an immobilization order from Hillcrest Estates, she said. Your account shows 2 unpaid fines and a missed hearing. The boot stays on until you pay the balance in full. What is the balance? $340. 2 $50 fines, a $100 tow authorization fee, a $50 immobilization fee, and a $40 processing fee. I have never been to a hearing, I said. I was never notified. I appealed every fine in writing and got no response. She sighed. Sir, I do not handle the disputes. You need to take that up with the HOA. We just enforce the authorizations we receive. I hung up and called Steve. He answered on the first ring. She booted your car, he said. I just heard about it. She is telling people you refuse to pay fines and that you were parking illegally. I am parked in my assigned spot, I said. And the fines are fabricated. She never held hearings. She backdated notices. And she ignored my appeals. Steve hesitated. I believe you, he said. But the rest of the board does not know the details. She controls the paper trail. If you go to a hearing now, she will present her version and you will be walking into an ambush. Then I need to flip the script, I said. I spent the next 2 hours drafting a formal complaint to the management company. I attached the doorbell footage of Karen placing the unauthorized sign. I attached the timeline of fake notices and missed hearings. I attached the gate malfunction evidence and the immobilization notice. I included photos of my valid parking decal and my assigned spot. I cited the HOA bylaws requiring timely responses to appeals and the state regulations prohibiting retaliatory enforcement. And I included one line at the end. I am prepared to escalate this complaint to the Texas Attorney General and local media if the HOA does not immediately reverse all fines, remove the immobilization device, and provide a written explanation of enforcement procedures. I sent it via certified mail with signature confirmation. 2 days later, the management company called. Not the receptionist. A regional manager. Mister, we have received your complaint and we are reviewing the enforcement actions in question, he said. We need a few days to pull the records and speak with the board. I need the boot removed today, I said. I have a notary appointment tomorrow and I cannot miss it. If that boot is still on my car tonight, I am calling a locksmith and billing the HOA for the removal. He paused. Let me make a call, he said. An hour later, the tow company showed up. Different driver. He unlocked the boot without a word and loaded it into his truck. I asked if the fines were cleared. He did not know. I called the management company back. The regional manager answered. The fines are under review, he said. Do not pay anything until we resolve this, and do not move your car from your assigned spot. We are putting a hold on all enforcement actions against your unit until further notice. I hung up and texted Steve. He replied immediately. Karen just found out about the complaint. She is furious. She called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow night, and she is trying to get you banned from attending. I showed up to the meeting early. It was held in the community center, a bland room with folding tables and metal chairs. 5 board members sat at the front, Karen in the center wearing her white visor and gray jacket, a stack of papers in front of her. Steve sat at the far end, avoiding eye contact with her. I took a seat in the front row. Karen glared at me. This meeting is for board business only, she said. Residents may observe, but may not speak unless recognized. I pulled out my phone and set it on the table in front of me, camera facing the board. "I am here to observe," I said. She looked at the phone, then at me. "Recording is not allowed without board approval," she said. "Texas is a one-party consent state," I said. "I am a party to any conversation directed at me, and I am recording for my own protection. If you would like to adjourn to a private executive session, that is your right. But this is a public meeting, and I am a resident." One of the other board members, an older man with glasses, leaned over to Karen and whispered something. She scowled but said nothing. The meeting started with routine business: budget updates, landscaping bids, pool maintenance. Then Karen moved to new business. "Item 7, she said. Compliance enforcement review. We have received a complaint from a resident alleging improper notice procedures and retaliatory actions. I want to address this publicly so there is no confusion about our process." She opened her folder and pulled out a printed packet. She held it up for the room to see. "This is the full record of violations for Unit 214, she said. Multiple parking infractions, unauthorized guests, gate evasion, and destruction of safety signage. Every notice was delivered in accordance with HOA bylaws. Every hearing was properly scheduled. The resident failed to attend, failed to pay, and is now attempting to use a manufactured complaint to avoid consequences. If you are enjoying this chaos, hit that like button and subscribe for more HOA nightmare stories." I stayed silent. I let her build her case. She flipped through the pages, reading dates, citing rule numbers, describing each violation in detail. She made it sound airtight. Then she said it. "Your paperwork is cute. Mine has a letterhead." I smiled. I waited until she finished. Then I raised my hand. She ignored me. I stood up. "I have a question," I said. "You are not recognized," she said. The older board member with glasses cleared his throat. "Patricia, if the resident is named in the complaint, he should be allowed to respond." Karen's jaw tightened. She nodded once. "Fine," she said. "You have 2 minutes." I pulled a folder from my bag. I opened it and placed a single sheet of paper on the table in front of the board. "This is a sworn statement from a neighbor who witnessed you placing an unauthorized no parking sign at my assigned spot 6 days ago," I said. "The statement includes photos with timestamps that match my doorbell footage. The footage shows you placing the sign, adjusting it, and leaving. You then filed a violation notice claiming I removed official HOA property. That is false. The sign was not official, and you placed it to fabricate a violation." Karen shot to her feet. "That is a lie," she said. "I never placed any sign." I pulled out my phone and held it up. "I have the video," I said. "Would you like me to play it now, or would you prefer to review it privately with the board before we continue?" The older board member held up his hand. "Patricia, sit down," he said. She did not move. Her hands were shaking. The packet she had been holding slipped from her grip, and a gust from the air vent caught the top pages. They scattered across the table and onto the floor. Steve leaned forward. "I think we need to adjourn to executive session," he said. The older board member nodded. "Agreed. This meeting is adjourned. We will reconvene in 15 minutes for a closed session." I walked out of the room. I sat in the hallway and waited. 20 minutes later, the door opened. The older board member stepped out and waved me back in. "The board has reviewed the evidence you provided," he said. "We are freezing all enforcement actions against you pending a full policy rewrite. The fines are dismissed. The tow authorizations are canceled. And we are removing Patricia as meeting chair and reassigning compliance oversight to a third-party management company." Karen sat in the corner, arms crossed, face blank. She did not look at me. "We are also terminating our contract with the current tow vendor," the board member continued. "We have discovered that the vendor was operating under a kickback arrangement where the compliance officer received a per-tow referral fee. That arrangement was never disclosed to the board and violates state HOA regulations." I stared at Karen. She still would not make eye contact. The board member turned to her. "Patricia, You are relieved of all compliance duties effective immediately. You will remain on the board as a non-voting member until the next election. If you attempt any further enforcement actions, we will remove you entirely and recommend legal action." She stood up, grabbed her jacket, and walked out without a word. The tow company called me the next morning. Different voice this time. A man, older, sounded like management. "This is the owner of the tow service," he said. "I just reviewed the enforcement logs from Hillcrest Estates and I want to apologize. We had a contract with the HOA that included an incentive program for referrals, and it looks like that program was being abused. We are terminating our contract with Hillcrest Estates, and we are refunding any fees you paid related to the immobilization and tow authorizations." "I did not pay anything," I said. "Good," he said. "Then consider this a formal apology. We are also blacklisting the HOA from future contracts until they clean up their enforcement procedures." I hung up and called Steve. He answered laughing. "You just nuked the entire enforcement system," he said. "The board is scrambling to find a new tow vendor and nobody wants to touch us." Karen tried to call an emergency meeting to contest her removal, but the management company told her she does not have the authority anymore. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now we rewrite the rules," he said. "The board is forming a committee to draft new enforcement procedures with resident input. No more unilateral actions. No more compliance hotlines controlled by one person. Everything goes through a third-party manager with oversight." I took a breath. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could park my car without checking for a boot. 2 weeks later, I got a call from the regional manager at the management company. "I wanted to update you on the final resolution," he said. "The board voted to adopt the new enforcement procedures, and we are implementing a resident appeal process with mandatory response timelines. Patricia Cooper has resigned from the board entirely, and we have flagged her file to prevent her from serving in any HOA leadership role at properties we manage." I thanked him and hung up. I walked outside. My car was still in my assigned spot, no stickers, no boots, no threats. The mailboxes looked the same. The gate worked. The neighborhood looked normal. But I knew what had been underneath. A system where one person could weaponize petty rules, fabricate violations, and turn a parking dispute into a harassment campaign. A system where the only defense was documentation, patience, and the willingness to call the bluff. I still see Karen sometimes. She walks past my building on her way to the mailboxes. She does not make eye contact. She does not stop. She just keeps walking. And I keep my doorbell camera running. I hope you enjoyed this wild HOA mess.